Welcome to Pharmacy View podcast, where we provide regular interviews with pharmacists and key industry people within Australian pharmacy and associated industry. In this stream of podcast episodes, we discuss aspects of pharmacy career, resources and training, and how each area interacts with guests' current role or pharmacy-related business. I'm your host, Kavita Nadan, Pharmacist Founder from Locumate, and my guest today is proudly brought to you by Shopfront Solutions, for all of your shelf and digital marketing needs, part of the Arion Technologies Group.
I very much created a training program in a way that I felt, again, like the kind of experience I would like to have when I was learning about this. So it is not the typical kind of just read content. What I've done is I've intentionally gone out and found global experts, including like the World Health Organization, and interviewed experts in this space. So we make sure we've got the latest clinical evidence and the latest information from the experts. So that's number one. There's a whole lot of interviews, and they're, like a podcast in that kind of way where it's conversational, but giving people an opportunity to share why they think it's important for pharmacists to play a role, and also how they think pharmacists can get involved. And, I'll just stop for a minute to share when I interviewed the WHO. It was so cool. We were having this chat, and then halfway along he says, Jenny, until you reached out to me, I hadn't really thought about the role that pharmacy could play. And he said, and now that you've reached out and now that we're talking, it dawns on me that there is a potentially great role that pharmacists could play. So for those people who aren't pharmacists, I've got to tell you, so many people say to me, but hold on, why pharmacy? And then when you explain it, the penny drops that pharmacy is not about dispensing medication. It's about a relationship with patients. It's about building community. Then it makes a lot of sense. So I interviewed experts, but I also went out and interviewed pharmacists who are deeply passionate about addressing loneliness, who are already doing things on the ground. So we can really highlight that pharmacists are doing a lot of this.
Hello, everybody. It's been a while since I've done a podcast, but my goodness, what a way to come back into podcast land. I've got today a very special guest with me. It is Jenny Kirschner from PALS. Now, a lot of people would probably know Jenny from other things because she's been one of the key people in our industries over the years. But, before we dive into Jenny and her career and so many more exciting things that she's working on right now, I always start off my podcast, Jen, with a bit of a icebreaker question. So today's question for you is, what is your favorite cuisine and why?
Oh, okay. That's my favorite cuisine. I was going to say, do you think ice cream fits under cuisine? That was the first thing that came to mind. But let me just have a minute. Okay, no. Well, again, not cuisine. But at the moment, I'm quite liking crackers and camembert cheese, that kind of thing. And the quince paste and olives. Oh. That combination. I'm going to name that as the cuisine.
Yeah, I could eat that day, night, everything. It's just the best. I think cheese is life. So I think cheese, crackers, olives, best combination. So I love that. Awesome.
Good.
All right, Jen, let's get into it. So for me, I wanted to know, and I guess for our listeners as well, if there was to be a book written about Jenny Kirschner, what would be in that book?
I'm going to go backwards with my biography, okay, on what was written about me. I know that the most meaningful work that I've done is the work on addressing loneliness. And I think that that's how the book would start, with saying that I feel like it's taken me a long time. My friends laugh because I feel like pharmacy wasn't always the right fit. And I've tried everything. I've tried hospital pharmacy, retail pharmacy, corporate. I've done kind of a whole lot of different things. But I was never quite able to totally tap into something that felt authentically from the place that I wanted to contribute. And so it's kind of like I had to create my own little lane. And that was kind of introducing the importance of authentic connection as part of that holistic healthcare that we offer. So really, I think my book would start with the end in mind, knowing that I actually did feel like I got to a place where I feel a bit of internal peace, that I've been able to put something humble and small, but something out there that feels really meaningful to me. So the book would start there. But then I would go back to say, and I guess the audience here, pharmacists and pharmacy students and the whole pharmacy industry, that there are so many things that we can do as a pharmacist, especially now. And, you know, yourself with Locumate, there are opportunities. And so the book would probably be about the opportunities for pharmacists to really evolve into their best selves and bring that to the table. I know there were places that I worked where I had to kind of shrink and just be transactional in what I was doing, with care, but transactional. And kind of the book, I think, would be about me is not letting go of your natural qualities and inclinations that you can actually bring to the pharmacy industry, and finding the right way to bring those to life and to contribute. And whether that's one-to-one with a patient, whether it's at a workplace, impacting on, you know, that the workplace culture, which again, I know you do a lot of work around that, or whether it's something that you know, for me, addressing loneliness is kind of ushering in a movement of something that hasn't been done before. So, maybe it's less of a biography and more of a book around trying to motivate younger pharmacists to understand that they can show up as their full self in the workplace as a pharmacist. There are opportunities for that now.
That's amazing. And I love this piece on, you know, because with students nowadays, you know, just understanding that our pharmacy profession extends way beyond that traditional role of, you know, being between in a pharmacy or a hospital space. And I think you're a great example of that. I was looking back at doing a bit of research on you, looking back at some of your experiences as well. Like, you know, I saw that you founded a couple of little projects. Motherfunker, I think it was. Can you tell me a little bit about that? Because that seems so interesting to me. Yeah, I'd love to hear about it.
So as I was saying, I kind of was trying to find my groove. Where could I best contribute? And I'd had young children at that point in time, and I used to love going dancing. But when you've got little children, the only places really go is a place where you listen to Wheels on the Bus, or, you know, the kind of kids music, and it doesn't always, you know, give the mother what they're craving, which is kind of, you know, expression and a bit of high energy joy. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to create what I wanted, which was a daytime dance party for mums where their babies can come along. And it was called Motherfunkers. So I ran a series of those. There were about 4 of them that I ran, and a whole range of different mums, not friends, just random mums came along. And when I think back, you know, very much like the Steve Jobs moment, you know, he jumped, you know, quit school and did calligraphy. And if he hadn't done his calligraphy course, then we might not have the fonts we have. In a way, that's how I feel. When you think about that, what I was actually doing was creating community, creating a local community, addressing a need, which is that mums can often be very isolated and lonely and not in community, or not being able to do the hobbies or things that make them feel themselves. So it was that. So that was really fun. And then I'll share a couple of other things, which is like my partner and I lived in Sydney, and he had intolerances to gluten, and he was looking for chocolate. And so all the chocolate, the gluten-free chocolate, was very expensive. So he thought, nah, I'll just make my own. So what happened is we ended up together getting into a commercial kitchen and scaling this production of handmade raw organic chocolate and distributing those in Melbourne and Sydney. So again, I'm sharing that, you know, I was a pharmacist, I was still working. I worked as a health coach for Diabetes Australia. At the moment, I work in digital health part as a job also. But if you've got these other passions or excitements or colors to your personality, I feel like it's really important to find a way to express those and bring them out. And then you never know where that's going to lead. You never know what that crosses over to be. You know, I applied for a clinical entrepreneur program that I got into last year. And what they loved was the Motherfunker story. That was a bit of a clincher that made them think this clinician for this clinical entrepreneur program is doing things a bit differently. So you never quite know. So my advice and my kind of, I would love to give everybody permission to experiment and be bold and be themselves. I really feel like that's an important part of the journey of somebody's career, professional career, is to hold on to some authentic, natural skills and talents and interests and passions. Yeah.
That's amazing. And I think that's such a beautiful story of where, especially as a young mom, trying to find a community and doing something different to then be able to use your skills of people and building that community to bring people together, right? And, mums generally just such a vulnerable part of our society who need that bit, that social aspect to keep things going because there's so many other pressures that surround them as well. Now, you mentioned this thing about building community and you continue to do that to this day. And one aspect is the loneliness piece, right? Which is where PALS has
Yeah.
actually been born from. Now, when was that moment that you thought, I really need to really start looking into this and create this as a project and as something that's going to revolutionize pharmacy? What was there a light bulb moment, or did you think, no, this is something that's always been an aspect of my career and my journey, and I now really want to spend all my time and effort into it?
So again, I think it's about hearing your calling and hearing your passion sometimes. So I experienced a lot of loneliness in my 20s and 30s. When I was studying pharmacy and during that time in my first kind of placements and roles, and loneliness is an interesting thing because to the outside, it can look really normal, like there's nothing wrong. Right? It's a very internal, private, painful experience. So my interest in loneliness stemmed from my personal experiences of it. And for a long time, I thought I would like to do something, but I was so identified with the experience of loneliness that it wasn't the right time. But then COVID happened and life had changed. And with COVID, as we all know, loneliness was in the spotlight and it became something that we could talk more comfortably about publicly. And it was this window of opportunity to capitalize on that little crack where we could change the dialogue here. So that's where I thought, well, now's the time to talk. Where can I make most impact? I thought, well, pharmacy community. I mean, it's obvious for pharmacists. We see people all the time. We know you get that sense of who's lonely, the people who come in to chat, just to chat, not even to have scripts done. And so that's when I thought, now's the time. And, Kavi, things are a hustle. Like I've hustled hard. I've reached out on LinkedIn to, pharmacy journals and to pharmacy, universities and to conferences. And I said, can I talk on this? Can I talk on this? And eventually I started getting some yeses, right? And this was, a couple of years ago. This was totally not on the agenda really. But I just said, here's the evidence. This is the science. This is something we need to talk about. And this is why. And I was committed and determined and passionate, and getting a couple of yeses gave me that traction and motivation to keep going. And so that kind of led the journey to then culminate in a training program specifically for pharmacists. And yeah, that's kind of that was the journey. So it really started from my experiences of loneliness and just this long-term feeling that I felt like I needed to do something about this. Humbly in a small way. It's a big issue, but just something. Yeah.
Of course, but it really has. And I remember seeing you on Shark Tank, yeah, at PSA. I can't remember, was it 2 years ago? I'm not, yeah, 2 years ago. And I was blown away. I'm like, wow, I've never ever thought of this as an actual a problem, which is bigger than just the fact, oh, I feel lonely, right? It goes well and truly above and beyond that. And to see you now here 2 years later, I mean, amazing, Jenny. Like I've been following your journey through LinkedIn and obviously at conferences
Vice
and
versa.
hearing you speak. And I just feel like now everyone's really understanding what this is all about. And then when I went to PSA this year, to see that there's now a course with PSA for pharmacists to really understand, get trained up on this. It's incredible. Like, well done to you on getting to this stage. But I would love to know more about this course because I know as a PSA member, when I'm looking to do my CPD points, etc., I think, what am I going to be doing?
Yeah.
Tell me more about this. Like, what does it entail?
So I'm going to tell you what I really hope that people get out of it. Again, I'm going to start a bit backwards. I very much created a training program in a way that I felt, again, like the kind of experience I would like to have when I was learning about this. So it is not the typical kind of just read content. what I've done is I've intentionally gone out and found global experts, including like the World Health Organization, and interviewed experts in this space. So we make sure we've got the latest clinical evidence and the latest information from the experts. So that's number one. There's a whole lot of interviews, and they're, like a podcast in that kind of way where it's conversational, but giving people an opportunity to share why they think it's important for pharmacists to play a role, and also how they think pharmacists can get involved. And I'll just stop for a minute to share when I interviewed the WHO. It was so cool. We were having this chat, and then halfway along he says, Jenny, until you reached out to me, I hadn't really thought about the role that pharmacy could play. And he said, and now that you've reached out and now that we're talking, it dawns on me that there is a potentially great role that pharmacists could play. So for those people who aren't pharmacists, I've got to tell you, so many people say to me, but hold on, why pharmacy? And then when you explain it, the penny drops that pharmacy is not about dispensing medications. It's about a relationship with patients. It's about building community. Then it makes a lot of sense. So I interviewed experts, but I also went out and interviewed pharmacists who are deeply passionate about addressing loneliness, who are already doing things on the ground. So we can really highlight that pharmacists are doing a lot of this, right? So the training, just high level of what it is for anyone who's interested, it's online training. There's 10 modules. It covers everything from what loneliness is, through to the health impacts of loneliness, the impacts on medication use, to what pharmacists can do at a patient level, a pharmacy level, and a community level. And then there's a dedicated module on loneliness within the profession, because health professionals are very much at risk of loneliness. And there's questions at the end. So it's been accredited for 10 CPD points. So it's 5 hours of content to do at your own time. The feedback has been really humbling and beautiful, that people are feeling so engaged with the media content and feel like I've had a couple of people reach out and say, we sat and just did it in one whole session because I just was so interested and engaged. So for me, everyone, the call here is, if you guys want to learn more about loneliness, or if you're feeling lonely yourself and you want to take a deep dive, this is an interactive journey that I think you'll really enjoy. There's quotes, there's stories, there's lived experience. It's very much about opening your heart and going on a deep journey, and then also being empowered to understand, hey, there are little things I can do. So for example, there's a pharmacist who, a patient had a partner who passed away, and they have kind of supported him to volunteer in the pharmacy to chat with people. That's his role. He comes and he chats. Right? So that's beneficial in so many ways, for not just the patient, but for also the other patients. Little things like pharmacists writing little notes and putting them into the delivery packs for people to take home. And there's one pharmacist, when she went to visit this lady had collected months of her little scribbles in an envelope in the drawer in her house, right? Just showcasing absolutely how transformative and meaningful little connections make. And I would guess most people listening have an example, at least one, of something that they've done or they do on a regular basis. So this is really also, allowing everyone to feel good that they're contributing to something that, as you said, is now loneliness, which is a WHO health priority. Right? This has been declared a health priority. It is a massive issue. 1 in 3 Australians experience loneliness. 1 in 6 experience severe loneliness. This is common. It's also very human, but there are things that we can do to help people move from loneliness to a more connected space.
Yeah, look, that sounds brilliant. And I guess for especially us as pharmacists, like we are a very high touch profession, right? So we see people come in, and you'll get the likes of your regular, patients who you're constantly in touch with, and you kind of follow their health journey, but it's not until that you build up that relationship that you really know if there is other things going on.
Yes.
And so recognizing the signs of loneliness, which we don't know, we might just be like, oh yeah, that's just how they are, or that's just their persona. But sometimes it goes much deeper than that. And I think this is great. And I love the interviews and, the audio, the video aspect of the training, which I think just makes it a little bit different to your regular
Yes.
read this, answer this kind of scenario, right?
I've had people comment some of the music I have in the intro videos is a bit like rock. It's just a bit intentionally different for
Yeah.
cut through, because this is a heavy subject, but it doesn't have to be depressing actually. There's something telling us that it's really human to feel lonely. It's a sign to us that our connections aren't where we want them to be. And it should be an empowering course. It's real and it's raw, but it should be empowering.
And I guess, like, if there are non-pharmacists listening to this podcast as well who may not be able to access the training, but what advice would you give them to maybe just signs to recognize that somebody may be in this space? What can they do?
Yes,
Or how can they?
Yes,
Yeah.
I was going to share, you're right. So we do in the
Yeah.
course also cover signs and symptoms and what to look out for. A really important point here is that loneliness is subjective. And what that means is it's a feeling and you can't always see it. Compared to something, for example, like social isolation, which is the number of friends or people that you're engaged with, the number, you can see that. So you can't always see it. You can only absolutely be sure if you ask. However, we know that some of the obvious signs is if people come in and they're not actually buying anything and they're just coming in to chat, or they're coming in and they're getting a script, spreading them out over the days. Or, some other things to look out for are triggers for loneliness. So, for example, if someone's lost a partner, or if someone's going through a relationship breakup, or someone's had a significant health change or health event. So they're some of the things that might be triggers or risk factors for loneliness that you can look out for too.
Yeah, yeah. No, these are great. Because, you know, there's when you leave the pharmacy, there's like pharmacist mode, and then there's like
Yeah.
daughter mode, there's sister mode, there's like, do you know what I mean? And sometimes you
Yeah.
just those two worlds just don't connect. So I
Yeah.
think the ability to recognize things that are in front of you, but knowing what they might be is so important.
Yeah, and the only thing I was going to say, I know that the training program at this stage is intentionally pharmacist specific only, because I
Yeah,
feel like we're trying to introduce the science into the curricula and have that kind of
correct.
whole pharmacy approach. But it's very part of the training is also saying, well, make sure all staff are educated. So really, if there's a pharmacy assistant interested and there's a pharmacist in the pharmacy, if the pharmacist does that training, they should hold a little team meeting. It doesn't have to take long.
Exactly.
They can go
Yeah,
through,
absolutely.
use the slides and just go through a high level presentation of this is what
Yeah.
loneliness is. Here's some signs and symptoms. Here's some health impacts, and here is some language, the right language, like with diabetes. There's appropriate language. With loneliness, there's also language. We don't want to say combating. We don't want to say
Yeah.
pandemic. We don't want to say some of these words because it's a common human experience. So, we can easily, as a pharmacy team, empower the whole team. As pharmacists, we can empower the whole team to learn about this just from the same, presentation deck. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Correct. And like that whole imparting of knowledge and spreading the awareness, it starts, I guess, from us, right? As the healthcare professionals in the pharmacy. And then we give that out to our pharmacy assistant. It could be our junior who is working a couple of days a week. So
Yeah.
the more people who know and are aware of it can make such a difference.
And I was going to show, you guys would all know, be familiar, PSA have self-care cards. And so,
Yes.
like the little cards for consumers about
Yeah.
topics like threadworm and lice. Well, we've done one on loneliness also as the start of improving health literacy. And also in the program, you can download flyers and posters also, right? And it's just,
Yeah.
this is the start of a movement of the whole community, the whole of Australia, starting to shift the conversation. And we can be very much involved in the health promotion around the fact that loneliness impacts health, but social connection is protective of health. Like it's just a very much we talk about healthy eating, we talk about healthy exercise. We should also be talking about the importance of healthy social connections, just as a business as usual conversation, part of holistic healthcare. It's an easy, role for us to play.
That's right. Correct. Just in terms of, going through this process, what have been some of your learnings from, getting into this space of I guess, a startup and being a founder of Pals? Like, what has the last 2 years looked like for you, and what's some things that you've come away with from your experience?
Okay, I'm going to start with a few words, and I bet you agree and match them. Hustle, hustle, hustle. A few
Yep.
big hustles. Um, there's a big commitment. I think, when you go through entrepreneur programs and when you get into that little world, the common quote is to fall in love with the problem, right? Rather than your solution. And I really feel that that's true, because what happens is you start your journey of trying to address something and your solution is likely to change. It's not a linear process. And I think as a pharmacist, in our training, we're taught, have a clear target, work really hard, and you'll go from A to B. And I really feel like entrepreneurship is not that. It is very non-linear and it is very unpredictable and uncertain. So I guess what I've learned is to stay focused on and always reconnect with the cause and what I'm trying to support and address, and be less attached to the solution, but be happy to go on the journey. And the other thing I've learned is I've reached out. I mean, when I say network, I don't mean superficial networking. I've really connected with a lot of people who are experts in this space locally and globally. And that takes time, and it takes courage just to, on LinkedIn, for example, reach out to someone and say, can we have a chat? But when there is an authentic connection to the cause, people are likely to say yes. So I have spoken to phenomenal people people who have left Google to work on loneliness. Recently, someone who's left Meta to work, Facebook to work on loneliness. And it's just been a simple reach out on LinkedIn and somebody said yes. So I think part of the learning is, hustle hard, be okay with the fact that the journey is going to be non-linear, and network authentically, reach out to people who are passionate about the same, and self-care. I mean, I don't do it well, to be honest. I've got a couple of jobs. Pals is a passion project. I've got young children. I'm not doing much sleeping, but I do think there are times when I need to pull back and go camping, reconnect, or pull back and say, I'm not going to do something tonight. I'll sit with the kids and we play a card game, or, go to the park. There needs to be a commitment to a lifestyle. That's really probably what I would say. And I feel like if I was going to reverse the interview and ask you the same questions, you probably would share the same sentiment. There's something
Very
about
much
it,
so.
right? That is not a start and stop. It's a decision to say, well, I'm going to go on this journey and I have to learn how to do it better. Someone gave me advice the other day. They said a really great entrepreneur is someone who learns to better manage the emotional journey between the wins and the things that don't go well, right? Because there's a lot of that. And if you can weather the storm more comfortably, that probably, is a more productive, healthy way of doing this kind of lifestyle. So there's some of the things that come to mind. Yeah.
That's amazing. And I think for a lot of the newer entrepreneurs, and especially our next generation of entrepreneurs, like, hearing things like this is so important, because sometimes we feel like, why isn't it happening right now? Or I need to balance it all. I need to have it all. And this is a great example of, you don't actually, and be easy on yourself, right? Take it easy on yourself. Spend your energy for the cause, and at the same time make it as part of a lifestyle, as you have mentioned. I love that.
And also the fact that it takes a long time. You asked me where this started. It started over 10 years ago with my own experiences. So it is not, they always say it can look like an overnight win, but, things take a decade to kind of get somewhere often, or, not a decade, but a long time. And so one thing I should mention, which I didn't, is that I partnered with the Pharmaceutical Society of Australia to launch this program. And even that, sometimes you've got to find other people in positions of decision-making power who understand your cause, So there's a lot about entrepreneurship that's an alignment, positive alignment of factors, some of which you control and some of which you don't. And you kind of still got to go on that journey in the uncertainty of it all and try and enjoy the process. You got to find a way to enjoy it. Yeah.
Exactly. And I think that's great advice. I really do. Now, what's next on the cards for you, Jenny? Like whether it's pals, whether it's, doing something exciting, even different, or, anything personally, what's next in the next, say, 12 to 18 months for you?
There's a couple of things. Number one is a break, a bit of kind of
Mm,
self-care time that we spoke about, which is really important to schedule it in. Um,
yeah.
the other thing is I would love to work towards a campaign, a national campaign around addressing loneliness, which is, there's the training component, but then anyone who's listening who has any contacts who would like to come on board with a, awareness campaign, a health promotion campaign, and then a couple of other things. But I think I would really love to hear from anyone who is passionate about loneliness or doing something. I would love, I'm happy to interview people who wanted to share their story of what they're doing in the pharmacy. So I would like to say I'm going to do not much, but I feel like there will be a lot that will happen in 12 to 18 months. So again, on the journey of not quite knowing, but happy to be on that journey. Yeah.
I love that. Yeah, keeping it open and spontaneous at the same time, but having some set goals. And I love that you're taking a break. So important. You can kind of come back so much more refreshed and ready to take on more tasks and challenges.
Yeah.
So as we wrap it up, Jenny, I guess thank you so much for being here today. Like this is amazing, and I feel for all the pharmacists listening today and all the non-pharmacists as well that this is something that we just need to really actually make it a priority, because it is actually at the center of everything that we do in our careers and our lives as well, right? So helping the people that we deal with on a daily basis, but also our loved ones as well. So really, really, really amazing initiative. Now, if anyone did want to connect with you, what social media handles or where would they be able to get in touch with you?
Yeah, sure. So I'm on LinkedIn under Jenny Kirschner. I'm also on LinkedIn under Pharmacy Addressing Loneliness and Social Isolation, very long. Or send me an email on hello@palsglobalnetwork.com.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for your time today, Jenny. And I wish you all the best.
Thank you so much.
Always. Thank you. Thanks for joining us today on the Pharmacy View podcast. And don't forget to like, share, and leave us a comment if you found this episode of value or have feedback. Podcast episodes are promoted through social media, LinkedIn, YouTube, and major podcast mediums. And each episode can be found on the Pharmacy View webpage with links to the guest contact and business details. If you're a pharmacist or industry support supplier and would like to join us on an episode, send us a message through LinkedIn or complete the inquiry form on the Pharmacy View webpage. I'm your host, Kavita Nadan, Pharmacist Founder from Locumate, and thanks again for joining us today on the Pharmacy View podcast.